Joy from News at 17 hours, we take a look at the headlines. Zambia's COVID-19 cases shoots up by 208 cases. PEP President Sean Tembo calls on government to lift the ban on the export of meal before considering an export of maize. In international news, a test to find out whether people have been infected with coronavirus in the past has been approved by health officials in England. And in sports news, Sporting Action President Dr. Billychelecur has urged families living with children with disabilities to be cautious and abide by the COVID-19 prevention guidelines during this period.
Joy FM News. Truth in defense of freedom.
With the details at 17 hours, my name is Billychelecur. The country has recorded 208 new COVID-19 cases following a total of 903 tests conducted. Health Minister Dr. Billychelecur says 554 of these were routine tests, and out of these 12 were found positive and involved truck drivers of different nationalities that used Chirundu border. He has, however, disclosed that Nakonde alone had 247 tests conducted, of 196 were positive. He adds that the country's cumulative number now stands at 654 cases, with 7 deaths and 124 recoveries.
In the last 24 hours, Zambia has carried out 903 tests. Now, I'd like to break down these tests so that I can create a context. There will be the tests that we conducted out of the routine surveillance from our hospitals, out of the routine surveillance from the mass screening in other parts of the country. Then there will also be the bunch of tests that we got from Nakonde. Remember that Nakonde, we've been doing some mass screening and targeted testing, and we've been reporting on the results from Nakonde in batches. So today we'll be reporting on the third batch of results that came from Nakonde. From the 903 tests, 554 were done from the routine testing, and these 12 tested positive, and this represented the truck drivers coming through Chirundu border, and they are of various nationalities. From the 247 tested during the targeted testing as part of the mass screening in Nakonde, and which included truck drivers, border officials, community members, healthcare workers, 196 tested positive. Other 102 tests that were done involved routine surveillance in our isolation facilities, particularly retesting of those who've been there as part of the criteria to ensure that the cumulative number of cases therefore rises to 654, including 7 deaths. Contacts for all these new cases are actively being traced.
The National Action for Quality Education, NAQE's Executive Director, Aaron Chancellor, says the decision to open schools for examination classes has come with a lot of questions and anxiety among stakeholders. Mr. Chancellor has stated that the decision to reopen classes for examination classes has come as a surprise, especially that it has been done following the continued increase of COVID-19 cases in the country. He has, however, said he is studying the decision, especially that there is a lot that needs to be taken into consideration before schools can be opened. He has observed and stated that the directive that children come with sanitizers and face masks may be a challenge for so many parents in rural areas. He has since called on the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, DMMU, and the Ministry of General Education to handle the issue with care.
The DMMU with the Ministry of General Education are supposed to give learners or distribute face masks to schools. The DMMU and the Ministry of Education are supposed to distribute sanitizers to schools. But the opposite has happened. What we have seen is that school authorities or provincial school authorities or education authorities are now instructing schools to buy those items before schools will open. And we feel that this is fighting against what the president directed, because from where we stand right now, schools have got no money, and that's why people are donating to a DMMU and the Ministry of Health in order to distribute these things to schools. So we appeal to DMMU to put their act together and make sure that they don't disappoint the president. Otherwise, we are seeing a situation where schools are going to fail to buy these sanitizers, buy spray classes, and again we are seeing directives going towards parents that they must buy face masks for learners.
Now, health specialist has urged journalists to take time to understand the process involved in coming up with any vaccine or interventions. Dr. William Kilembe, who is the project director at the Zambia HIV Research Project, has noted that there is need for journalists to thoroughly investigate claims of COVID-19 vaccines. He has stated that the media must also be able to question if claims of the COVID-19 vaccine meet the set standards. He was speaking during an online cross-border media cafe meeting on reporting on COVID-19. Stay with science and stay healthy and safe.
What is important also, and because I'm speaking to journalists and advocates, is that we need to make sure that we understand the process of drug development and vaccine development. So, for instance, it does not make sense for someone to say that I have discovered a treatment that I feel. There's usually the words that are used by people that are herbalists is, I feel this is going to work. Any intervention really needs to go through the rigorous testing that is supposed to be done. And it needs to be approved using the right channels of the regulatory frameworks that are within different settings. And so we need to be aware as journalists as we report about interventions that we feel have not undergone clinical trials. And the questions we should be asking these individuals is really, can you describe to us the testing that has been done, and they have been tested against what interventions to prove that they actually do work? It's not a feeling. It's not a feeling that people should have, but it should be based on evidence that has been generated from having done a clinical trial.
And speaking during the same meeting, media expert Zarina has noted that covering of COVID-19 among journalists has brought about a lot of anxiety because it is a new infection. Ms. Zarina has observed that as a result, it has become hard for journalists to keep track of information on the virus because there is so much news information coming in frequently. She has, however, called on the media to keep in mind some of the basic information on the COVID-19, especially in line with the correct testing mechanisms around the virus in order to be able to ask the right questions.
And not lose sight of the basics, the things that we learned long time ago, which is how COVID is and is not transmitted. Just like we had to learn how HIV is and is not transmitted. I think we need to also take that into account. We need to be very clear about how this new virus is and is not transmitted. And also the testing. I think it must be emphasized that testing is the only way in which to know whether one has COVID-19 or not. Even the integrity of the tests should be investigated. For example, we see people and organizations investing in thermometers checking for high temperatures. I think as journalists, we need to know whether this is a good measure of testing, because, to be honest, high body temperatures can be caused by many things.
And the health advocate from Uganda, Sylvia Nyakasi, says there is need for journalists and advocates to join forces in the fight against the COVID-19. She says journalists need to be able to share the correct and simplified information for the COVID-19 in order for communities to have a better understanding of the issue.
Some of the areas that we could really rally on sharing correct information. You find there's a lot that is happening in our communities, but also in our research institutions, for example, the science that is out there, the papers that are being presented. How can we rally together to put this information before the public? But also, we can simplify this information and translate it in simple languages and simple messages that our communities can ably understand. We can also amplify the issues, the impact of the COVID-19 on our communities. You find that as our governments are trying to prevent, the global partners are trying to give guidance on how to prevent the spread, there's a lot that has come with that.
The Rainbow Party has asked government to consider tax relief on workers amid the hardship caused by coronavirus. Rainbow Party Deputy National Spokesperson Humphrey Kawe says the 10 billion kwacha stimulus package for business must also give government the edge to reduce taxes on employees in a nation that is grappling from economic doldrums that have lingered for some time and have been worsened by COVID-19. Kawe adds that going by such a decision may help cushion the tax burden on ordinary Zambians, hence they must also benefit from interventions that have equally benefited other sectors of the economy. Government, through the Bank of Zambia, has introduced a targeted medium-term refinancing facility known as TMTRF that will enable financial service providers to support businesses and households that are being impacted by COVID-19 using the 10 billion kwacha stimulus package.
A number of workers, both in private and government institutions, are also going through hard time, are facing economic challenges. They cannot meet their daily costs in terms of food and other things that are needed for them to survive, especially during this time of COVID-19. A number of essential goods have, prices have gone up. You talk of cement has gone up, foodstuffs have gone up, almost everything has gone up, meaning these workers are struggling. So as a Rainbow Party, on behalf of the workers in this country, we want to ask the PF government through the Minister of Finance to quickly reconsider giving tax relief to the workers across the board.
Moving on with our news, Patriots for Economic Progress (PEP) Party President Sean Tembo has called on government to lift the ban of the export of mini meal before considering any export of maize. Mr. Tembo says he has noted with worry the announcement made yesterday by the Minister of Agriculture that government has authorized the export of 83,000 metric tons of maize. He has charged that this is because it gives an indication that there is no adequate coordination between the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, hence the disjoint nature of government policy. Mr. Tembo has since appealed to President Lungu to ensure that he makes good use of cabinet meetings so that there are no conflicting policies coming out of his government. This is according to a statement issued to Joy FM News.
As Patriots for Economic Progress, we believe that there is no adequate coordination between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, thereby creating the disjointed nature of government policy that has been coming out of late. We are also aware that given our current governance system, the person who is responsible for coordinating the activities and policies of different government ministries is the Republican President, It is for this reason that we wish to appeal to President Lungu to ensure that he makes good use of cabinet meetings to align government policy in a consistent and effective manner so that we do not have conflicting policies coming out of his administration.
Another UPND official in Kasama, Northern Province, has been arrested, bringing the numbers of those arrested to 4. Lazarus Chongo, a provincial party secretary who was picked by police on Wednesday, joins 3 others in custody jointly charged for unlawful assembly. The arrest of the UPND officials comes a few days after they received over 50 defectors from the Patriotic Front, PF. But party provincial chairperson Nathan Ilunga says the maneuvers are targeted at destabilizing the opposition. Mr. Ilunga has also questioned why, on the other hand, the PF is being allowed to host similar gatherings.
Mr. Chongo, our provincial secretary, has been arrested to add to the 3. There are now 4 in police custody. And a docket has now been opened because the police are fearful to, allow a police bond. Now they are saying, since we have opened the docket, the 4 of them who appear before the magistrate's court, that is where you are now going to, apply for a bail. So this is the current position now.
Let's take it to that. Take it to that. Let's take it to that. Take it to the mass. Take it to that. Take it to that. Let's take it to that. Take it to the mass. Take it to that. Take it to that. Let's take it to that. Take it to the mass. Take it to that. Take it to that. Let's take it to that. Take it to the mass. Yeah, baby. Apple Max. Cool, real, and natural. A quality product from Californian Beverages.
Imbira nsoma ku balimi bonse mwebava mu kitundu kya Lubemba ate mu Northern Province. Akampani ka Pioneer kamleterako imbuto y'amataba ipya eyitibwa P3812W. Iyi mbuto ilapapa bamakombo bamataba yalikoza ku kilala nakumpese yaliba iyabeeka kabiri nangula inflata ilokile okufikapo yena ilamena n'okukula. Ifo ba Pioneer City Company tuwasumina okutila ti inflata ebwaffe nakalya. Lelo kyaba n'embuto mwabika mushiri ekyo byale n'embuto ya Pioneer P3812W pakutila mwinga kamkulwa kabiri n'okumletera obukumu buntu mukabila. Imbuto y'amataba iya Pioneer P3812W ilesangwa mu ntende shonse omumushishi wa imbuto era na mu matepo. Byale n'imbuto ya Pioneer n'okumona obukumu.
What? The only seed for your bumper harvest. Quality seed. Pioneer. Sustainable seeds. Pioneer. Seed for the bumper harvest. Pioneer. And now, international news.
And now in international news, a test to find out whether people have been infected with coronavirus in the past has been approved by health officials in England. Public Health said their antibody test developed by Swiss pharmaceutical company was a very positive development. The blood test looks for antibodies to see if a person has already had the virus and might now have some immunity. Until now, officials have said such tests are not reliable enough. The government previously spent a reported £16 million buying antibody test, which later proved to be ineffective. Sources told the BBC that the test was the first one to offer serious potential. Antibodies are made by immune system as it learns to fight an infection.
Joy FM Sports News.
And now in sports news, Manali Constituency Area Member of Parliament Professor Nkandoluo has thanked the Kick Out COVID-19 Consortium for considering families living with children with disabilities during this period. Speaking when Consortium donated sanitary products and foodstuffs to the families in constituency, Professor Luo has said such projects need to be supported. Meanwhile, Sport in Action President Dr. Billychelecur has urged families living with children with disabilities to be cautious and abide by the COVID-19 prevention guidelines during this period. He says the consortium will continue going around helping families with children with disabilities to help them mitigate the challenges currently obtaining. As when the news recap all the headlines. Zambia's COVID-19 cases shoots up by 208 cases. PEP President Sean Tembo calls on government to lift the ban of the export of mealie meal before considering any export of maize. In international news, a test to find out whether people have been infected with coronavirus in the past has been approved by health officials in England. And in sports news, Sport in Action President Dr. Billychelecur has urged families living with children with disabilities to be cautious and abide by the COVID-19 prevention guidelines during this period. On behalf of the entire production team, this has been LWANDO Billychelecur. Thank you so much for your time. Bye for now.